Hi, everyone. My name is Jobina Fortson. I am the breaking news and traffic anchor for ABC 7 News in San Francisco and will be serving as your moderator for this conversation today. We're going to be talking about anxiety, stress, coupled with COVID-19 as we enter this holiday season, which I know so many people are looking forward to, but you might have some varying feelings around it. So, here to guide us with all of that is David Bond. He is the Director of Behavioral Health with Blue Shield of California. David, I'd like to turn it over to you very quickly before we jump into the conversation and let people know a little bit more about yourself.
Hi, Jobina. I'm so excited to be here with you today to have this conversation. I can't tell you how often this is probably the number one topic that people always want to talk to me about. And it's not just about dealing with the stress and frustrations of everything that's been going on in the world around them, but even at home with their own families, and especially around the holiday time. I've been with Blue Shield for it was actually 4 years last week. I've been a licensed clinical social worker for about 20 years, and my specialty has been in working with children, adolescents, and small children and their families, and particularly people who have had really, really bad things happen to them. I'm a trauma specialist.
Hmm. Well, trauma is honestly what the world has been going through for almost the last 2 years. So, you're the perfect person to discuss this all with because it has been traumatic. We are entering this happy time of year, right? Or this time that should be really happy for a lot of people. We know the holidays can bring up so much. And right now, we are seeing certainly anxiety and stress as this pandemic goes on. Because this time last year, of course, everyone was inside. People were probably thinking, okay, this year we have a vaccine, we have all these things. And now there's a new variant. And now we don't know what's going on. How can people work to manage this, and what should they be looking for?
Well, Jomina, there's so much in what you said too. So the first thing that I heard you say really was like it should be a happy time, and that really talks about our expectations around the holidays. And if you think about just the change in what holiday movies used to be like. When I was a little kid, most of the Christmas movies were really about this joyous, wonderful part of the year where children don't really cry that much and everyone finds romance and all family challenges that have lasted for years and years, all sort of get wrapped up in this magical holiday celebration and things get resolved. When really we need to manage our expectations about what the reality is of this time of year and Christmas, and not just necessarily what we think it should be because of some of our fantasies and about what we see in TV. And then the other thing, a second piece of what you were asking about was around COVID. So there are the basic things about taking care of your health, and there is no health without mental health. But there are things like get a vaccine if you're capable of doing so, wear a mask in places where it's appropriate and necessary to do so, wash your hands and do all of those things that are like basic healthcare practices that we have all been hearing about over the last year. But I think the point of it is don't stop. Get your flu vaccine if you're capable of doing so. Those things just to make sure that you're staying healthy, because those are really building blocks of strong emotional health as well, and resilience in dealing with all these additional stressors.
Oh, yeah. I want to unpack that a little bit because I know there are probably a lot of different answers to the question I'm going to ask you. But how has COVID-19 impacted people in the last 20 months? And what are you seeing that is making them most anxious and stressed?
Yeah. We talked a minute ago about trauma, and this is one of the first times, other than 9/11, this is a real trauma that everyone has gone through at the same time. And our responses and our reactions to trauma are unique among individuals, but the actual thing that's happening to us, that has a lot of commonalities. So where there might be like an acute trauma, like a single horrific incident that happened to one person that comes with shame and talking about it, or stigma associated with it. What's happened with COVID is that because we've all had this common experience of a community trauma, that the stigma associated with what we're going through has really been diminished. And that's the reduction in stigma is actually a really positive thing. It's like, wow, we're talking about mental health in ways that families didn't before, and the way that communities didn't before. And just the capability of each person to say, hey, how are you doing? And the knowledge of how important it is just to check in with each other. I think that's really been improved and increased.
Oh, yeah. I'm hearing you talk a lot right now about connection points, right? Interacting with people. And there are plenty out there that have not interacted with their loved ones. And this was it, David. This was this holiday because they're vaccinated, they were ready, and now we're in this space of uncertainty again. Do you have tips for people in that situation?
Well, I can't give advice that's going to work for everybody, but I can give some concepts to maybe keep in mind, and we can figure out how to make this work for ourselves. Something that really happens is about the narrative that happens inside our own minds. If you're coming at it from a place of despair and frustration and anger, that's going to continue to be your reality. There's a moment when we have to check ourselves, give yourself a minute, give yourself a break, to kind of go what we call metacognition, which means thinking about the way that you're thinking. And because it's perpetuating all of your emotional response, most of your emotional response comes from the way you're thinking about things. So it's hard to change feelings, but you can change some of your thoughts. So it's really around priming yourself to say, okay, there are things to be gracious about. There are things to practice gratitude about. There are things in this relationship that are positive. There are people I can go to for certain kinds of support that I need. There are resources available. If I look for them, I will find them. If I continue to think about how much this makes me in despair, that's how I will feel. So do I want to choose the thoughts that are helping me to feel worse, or choose the thought process that are helping me to feel better?
Now, with that, we know that some people turn to, their coping mechanisms. And for some, that can be alcohol, that can be sometimes dabbling in substances that they should not. Advice there.
Sure. How to identify when having a holiday cocktail is a fun and festive thing to do, and a cultural experience to share with others where it's not really problematic, versus when is drinking going to cause problems for me or for the people that I'm around, or not even just drinking, but other substances as well.
Exactly.
Something that one person once said to me was like, if you're ever in a relationship with a romantic partner and you're curious about whether something is cheating or not, ask your partner. They'll tell you. The same kind of thing with maybe having some cocktails. If you were going to ask a parent or a wise relative, do you think that this kind of behavior is problematic? And you know that their best advice is going to be, you know what, maybe you just have 2 or 2.5 cocktails at this party and limit yourself there. Like, take the best advice and listen to it.
Yeah. We've had a lot of talk now about families, and we've had some laughs in here too while addressing a pretty serious topic. Unfortunately, there are millions of people that have lost loved ones during the pandemic. And this holiday is going to be really, really tough. It's just such a hard question to even ask, because where do you begin to ask it, right? You are already feeling hurt in that you've lost a loved one. And then knowing the feelings that surround this pandemic, right? There are people that don't believe in it, or people that don't believe in vaccines. There are just so many layers to the grief. How can anyone begin to tackle something like that during this season?
Yeah. There's, for anybody who's experienced loss, so like this might be my first Christmas without, my spouse or a parent or a grandparent or someone who we've lost along the way and in the last year. And around the holidays is so triggering, because we remember this as like, many people have really joyous memories around what they did with that person around the holidays, or what that person was like on, Christmas morning or whatever holiday someone celebrates. And the truth of it is that sadness is necessary. we're human beings who have a full spectrum of emotional existence, and emotional experience, and sadness is one of them. And so I would say when when there's a time to be sad, and live it. You don't have to feel that way all the time. And then there's a time to feel joy and gratitude and live that too, because you don't get to feel that way all the time. So when someone has recently lost someone, I would say don't try to not be sad, but incorporate the other feelings too. So it's remembering not just I feel sad and I feel lonely, but do you remember that time when she did that thing where, oh my gosh, like, and then it's like, oh, that's okay to incorporate in. It's like laughter while crying. That's okay too. The concept I think to keep coming back to is this is a feeling that I have right now. It's not going to last forever. There's going to be an other side to this feeling too, and that other side will feel different.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And to play a supportive role too, and recognize that in yourself. And when you need some time, someone who cares about you will get it. Or you'll always be someone you can call or talk to who is like, hey, I need to not talk about this, or I need to talk about it. I need you to, would you mind just sitting next to me through this thing? Like, if you can identify what you might need, let somebody know, because there are probably plenty of people who are sitting there hoping they can be helpful, but they don't really know how.
Yes, yes, yes. We're talking about being helpful here. I want to dive into kids a bit. Our U.S. Surgeon General put out a really rare advisory. It's really rare that the U.S. Surgeon General puts out advisories, public ones, talking about children and essentially saying that there is an emerging youth mental health crisis in the U.S., specifically tied to the pandemic. What can I'm including myself in this, we as people, and especially people that had children, what can we do? What kind of special considerations can we give kids right now to help?
Yeah. Before the pandemic, we had a shortage of mental health professionals. Now we have a crisis of the dearth of mental health professionals. There isn't enough supply of people with this skill set. And I'm just talking about licensed clinicians too. There isn't enough supply of that, I hate to use the word, provider type, or that helper type to support the level of people who need it. So that is a piece of the crisis. Another piece is that there was a baseline resilience. So if you really think, just draw a line in your imagination, and then like a hill line that goes up and down with all of your like little emotional crisis and your joy. So it's like moments of joy and moments of pain and moments of joy and pain. That baseline resilience, because of this global pandemic, has dropped. So the things that were moments of pain have become a valley of more despair for many people, rather than a moment of pain that they were resilient with and could come back with and bounce back with really easily, or with relative ease. So an additional piece of it too is, for so long, people couldn't plan. We didn't know when things were going to get better. We don't know when things are going to get better. We still don't know when things are going to get better. I've had to put my wedding off 3 times because of COVID, and we had to cancel travel plans, and no one else could travel. And so it just kind of pushing things back. But it's like finally say, like, you know what? I'm tired of not being able to plan. We gotta like do the thing that we know we are going to be able to do, or do the thing we can do. And that is so stressful for kids, because when kids don't know what's coming next, or when kids don't know what to expect, the intensity of the anxiety that comes with that is typically even higher than it is for adults, who have lived longer. So like they can kind of see, like they've been through more tunnels. And so like this one, which is new, I've been through a little bit something kind of like this before, where for young people they haven't. So for parents too, there are hundreds, if not thousands or millions of websites that'll tell you like the signs to look for. like the oversleeping, overeating, undersleeping, undereating, poor concentration, fighting with their friends in ways they didn't have to, or substance use, substance misuse. Those are super common. I think that the skill that parents are picking up even more is legit checking in with your children in ways that are specifically saying, how is your heart doing? Like what is I use that line with my mom, even, like, how's your heart? Like, and how is your, like, how are you feeling about your mental health, like, in the last 2 weeks? Like, just literally doing a check-in, kind of like a physician might, even, and using that language. Now, different cultures have different ways of doing it too. Like, in my family, maybe you don't use those words, but you go into it, or I don't want to say my family necessarily, but like in some families, the concept of talking about mental health is like, no, we're not going to do that.
Yeah.
But we can talk about this other. We can have this conversation in the kitchen that's about this recipe, and maybe there's some other kind of metaphor. There's some proxy for a conversation about mental health that works in different cultures across the board.
Beautiful, David. Thank you. As we wrap up here, because I could obviously keep talking to you for a very long time with questions, but we do have some audience questions that I want to get to. The first one is this. I often find I have little patience during the holidays, and I get really annoyed over really little things. What kinds of things can be done to de-stress when I can't leave and be by myself for a few minutes?
When you can leave or cannot leave?
When she cannot leave.
Okay, well, when you cannot leave. Okay, so usually there's an opportunity for a bathroom break. So if you need to go have a bathroom meltdown for a minute, go for it. Go have a bathroom meltdown for a minute. Limit that time. And then when you are able to regroup, seriously, give yourself a break, breathe, and allow yourself a moment to reflect on, what do I actually need right now?
I think that is an advice all of us can use during this holiday season. David, thank you so incredibly much for this awesome advice. I can't even begin to thank you enough. I know I'm walking away with some great information, and I'm sure everyone else is too. So thank you.
Thank you, Jobina. This has been fun.
Definitely.